Tales from beyond the greenhouse. The sun was low over the jagged peaks of the New Mexican mountains, casting long shadows over the land. A dry wind howled through the pines, carrying with it the scent of sagebrush and dust. But in the hollow between the ridges, there was no sound but the rasp of a shovel cutting through the earth and the rhythmic strike of a hammer on wood. Joe had always been a man of patience, a man who liked his solitude. But even a hermit had his dreams, and Joe's dream was built out of wood, glass, and sweat. He was constructing a greenhouse, a place where warmth would seep in from the glass, where fragile life could thrive against the odds of nature, where vegetables and flowers would bloom as proof that a man, no matter how broken, could still build something beautiful. It wasn't a task for the faint of heart. The mountain air was thin, and the rocks beneath him were unforgiving. The earth resisted every effort to dig, like it was holding some dark secret. But Joe didn't mind. He was used to struggle, used to fighting for every inch of ground. The only company he had in the vast isolation was CT. She came down from the town, just a small cluster of cabins by the highway. She was the kind of woman whose beauty was too sharp to ignore, the kind who never needed to speak her mind. She said everything with the tilt of her head, the arch of her brow. A woman like that could destroy a man without even trying. She said she was there to help. Joe figured she needed a distraction, the kind of distraction only a place like this could offer. Somewhere out here, away from the noise and the people. He didn't ask questions about what brought her, though he'd heard the rumors, the kind that made a man question whether any woman could ever be truly trustworthy. Joe's hands were raw, his fingernails chipped, the sweat sticking his shirt to his back. Every day was a battle against time, the elements, and his own wariness. But every day CT came back, always with that quiet smile and a look that said she was a little too curious about him, about the life he was trying to build in the shadow of the mountains. It was the evening of the 4th week, and Joe had just placed the final panel of glass into the frame when he heard the click of heels behind him. "Joe," she said, her voice low and almost melodic, "there's something you should know." He paused, not looking at her, keeping his attention on the greenhouse. His heart skipped a beat. There was a tone in her voice, a warning, perhaps. Or maybe it was just his imagination running wild in the isolation. Still, he couldn't ignore the shiver that ran down his spine. He turned slowly, facing her. She was standing at the edge of the structure, one hand resting on the frame. Her eyes weren't the soft brown he'd come to expect. They were dark, almost black, with something hidden in them. A shadow. "You've been working too hard, Joe," she said, stepping closer. "Maybe it's time you took a break." The air between them was thick with something electric. He couldn't quite put his finger on it, but he could feel it, like a storm building on the horizon. And that's when it happened. The wind died, and the silence grew so heavy that it almost smothered him. "You're not here to help, are you, CT?" His voice was rough, a rasp of suspicion. She smiled, but it wasn't the same smile. It was colder, sharper, a smile that hinted at things buried beneath the surface. "I'm not here to hurt you, Joe. I'm here to show you the truth." He took a step back, feeling the unease settle in his gut like a stone. He had known from the beginning there was something off about her. He just hadn't wanted to see it. "Truth?" Joe asked. "What truth?" "The truth about what you've been building," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. Before he could respond, there was a noise, sharp, sudden, like a twig snapping in the dark. The kind of noise that made every hair on the back of his neck stand up. He turned quickly, his eyes scanning the perimeter of the clearing, but there was nothing. Nothing except the eerie quiet of the mountains. "You're not the only one who's been digging," she said softly, her voice almost drowned out by the wind that had suddenly returned. Joe's heart hammered in his chest. "What the hell are you talking about?" But CT wasn't looking at him anymore. She was staring beyond the greenhouse, her eyes narrowed, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Someone else has been digging," she repeated, her voice colder now. "They've been digging for something much older than you realize." Joe's breath caught in his throat. He took a step toward her, his mind racing. "What are you saying? Who else is here?" "That's for you to find out," she said, her voice distant, like she was already somewhere else, already lost in something Joe couldn't see. And then, just as suddenly as it had come, the feeling of dread receded, replaced by a quiet stillness. Joe didn't know whether to follow her, to press for answers, or to turn back to the greenhouse and pretend none of this had happened. But something told him he had no choice. The earth was hiding something, and whatever it wasn't going to stay buried forever.